Welcome to week 2 of our fall campaign, Hope on the Horizon. I'm Pastor William, and we hope that this life group has not only been enjoyable, but has challenged and deepened your faith. So this week we've been talking about heaven. And I really believe the church doesn't spend nearly enough time thinking about God's eternal kingdom. I read a story about an African man who came to the States to study to be a pastor. And in his first sermon at seminary, he said this. He said, "I've been in the United States for several months. I've seen great wealth, fine homes, expensive cars and clothes. I've listened to many good sermons, but I've yet to hear one sermon about heaven. Because everyone has so much in this country, no one preaches about heaven. But in my country, we preach on heaven all the time because we know how much we desperately need it." Wow. It seems the better off we are here on earth, the less we speak of heaven. With air conditioning, indoor plumbing, fancy SUVs, 70-inch Ultra HD flat screen TVs, limitless streaming content, an abundance of food and Xboxes and iPads and smartphones, it's almost like we've tried to make heaven here on earth. So who needs to dream of the real heaven? But friends, no amount of stuff or entertainment will ever come close to replacing God's eternal kingdom. We cannot let distraction keep us from finding our hope in God's promise. Okay, so if you caught the message on Sunday, we talked about how enormous eternity really is. And so eternity is so big, we really can't fathom it. And this truth really should totally change our perspective on life. For instance, whenever we experience something good and joyful, that delicious food, that fun time with friends or family, that majestic mountain view with all the aspens turning gold, we pause and we think, wow, this is but a glimpse, and it's going to be so much better in heaven. And then whenever we experience something terrible or tragic, pain or disease, sin or selfishness, injustice, poverty or abuse, we stop and remember, you know what, someday there's going to be an end to this once and for all. This won't be in heaven. Now, the big idea we were building toward this Sunday was that all of us, as followers of Christ, should live for eternity. When we stop and ponder the difference between this short life and the infinite size of eternity, the common sense logical thing to do would be to invest in heaven instead of investing in this earth. We need to live for eternity. And one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons we should live for eternity is that, as we explored in this life group study, was that there are going to be rewards in the kingdom of heaven. To quote one of my favorite movies, what we do in life echoes in eternity. And as we just read there in Corinthians, there is a second judgment that believers will face. And this one is not about salvation. We are saved by being born again. We are saved by grace through faith in the atoning work of Jesus Christ on the cross. Jesus is our advocate, but there is a second judgment, and this one is described in 2 Corinthians 5, verse 10. Paul says, "For we all must appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that each one may receive what is due him for the things done while in the body, either good or bad." Now that Greek word there for judgment seat, bema, was a seat used by kings to judge, but it was also used in the Greek world during athletics. The bema is where those who had been victorious, who had won, would come to receive their rewards. So what are those rewards? Well, I have to admit, I don't know. The Bible does not spell it out in detail. Some have said it will be crowns. Some say the rewards will be places of authority or responsibility. I don't know if there will be material things like land or treasure. The Bible's rather vague on it all. But as we said on Sunday, we don't know what it'll be, but we will not be disappointed. Because everything here on earth is but a cheap imitation of something real and wonderful in God's eternal kingdom. Now, the last word I want to share with you on this matter of heaven, if your group had time to read Luke 14, we see that our biggest priority when it comes to God's kingdom, what the Bible says, if what the Bible says about heaven is true, if eternity really is that long, if we believe what Jesus said and promised, then guys, the most important thing we can do is to bring more people to the feast. We need to be sharing our faith. We need to be bringing more people into the kingdom. That should be our priority as believers and as a church. So let's not waste one more minute we have in our short time here on this earth. Let's go get him. Let's bring him to the feast. Let's bring him to the kingdom.